Hey, and welcome to Puzzlehead. This channel is all about engaging stories with clever twists, unexpected turns, and moments that will pull you in emotionally. So if you enjoy drama, surprises, and endings that truly hit, then you're in the right place. Subscribe and join us for stories full of secrets, intense moments, and satisfying outcomes. Now, don't forget to turn on notifications. The next puzzle is about to begin.
My marriage was like my Mazda. It ran, but made weird noises that I'd been ignoring for way too long. Standing in my garage at 6 in the morning, buffing the paint off some rich guy's BMW, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything in my life was about to go sideways. My name's Nick Halpern, and I detail cars for a living. Not glamorous, but honest work. I've got steady hands, an eye for perfection, and a mouth that gets me in trouble more often than I'd like to admit. At 44, I figured I had life pretty well mapped out. Work, beer with my best friend Eric, home to my wife Renee, repeat until the end, or retirement, whichever came first. Renee had other plans. She'd been acting strange for months, late nights at the nail salon she co-owned with her friend Lila. Mysterious phone calls that ended abruptly when I walked into the room. New clothes that cost more than my monthly car payment. When I asked about it, she'd flash that smile that used to make my knees weak and say something about expanding the business or networking with potential investors. Nick, you wouldn't understand the beauty industry, she'd say, like I was some knuckle-dragging caveman who couldn't grasp the complexities of nail art and eyebrow threading. The thing is, I'm not stupid, I notice things. Like how she started showering as soon as she got home, even though she'd supposedly been sitting behind a desk all day. Or how she'd developed a sudden interest in classical music and expensive wine, things she'd never given a single thought about in our 15 years together. But the real kicker was the money. Renee had always been careful with cash, sometimes to the point of being cheap. Now she was throwing it around like she'd won the lottery. New purse here, spa weekend there, and don't even get me started on the business lunches that seemed to happen every other day. I tried talking to Eric about it. Eric Sloan had been my best friend since high school, the kind of guy who could sell ice to an Eskimo and make them thank him for the privilege. He ran the biggest used car lot in town and had a way of making everyone feel like they were his favorite person in the world. If anyone could help me figure out what was going on with my wife, it was Eric. Maybe she's planning a surprise party for you, he'd said last week over beers at Murphy's Tavern. You know how women get about that stuff. My birthday's not for 6 months, and she forgot it last year anyway. Eric had shrugged and changed the subject to the Cubs' chances this season. Looking back, I should have noticed how uncomfortable he looked. Should have paid attention to the way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. But hindsight's 20/20, and I was still operating under the assumption that my wife wasn't screwing around, and my best friend wasn't a lying piece of garbage. Lana, the bartender at Murphy's, was the first person to really listen to my concerns. She was about 30 with short red hair and the kind of sharp wit that comes from years of dealing with drunk idiots who think they're God's gift to womankind. She'd seen it all and had no patience for BS. Honey, she'd said while wiping down glasses, when a woman starts acting like she's got secrets, it's usually because she does. The question is whether you really want to know what they are. I thought I did. I was wrong about that too. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night in March. I'd gotten home early from work. Mrs. Patterson had canceled her appointment because her ancient Cadillac was in the shop, and found Renee in the kitchen, talking on her phone in a voice I'd never heard before. Soft, breathy, personal. I can't wait to see you tomorrow, she was saying. Wear that cologne I like. She turned around and saw me standing in the doorway. Her face went white, then red, then settled into that fake smile I've been seeing a lot of lately. I have to go, she said into the phone, then hung up. Hi, honey, you're home early. Who was that? Just Lila. We were discussing inventory. Inventory that involves cologne? It's complicated, business stuff. I wanted to call her on it right then and there, but something held me back. Maybe it was cowardice. Maybe it was the last shred of hope that there was some innocent explanation for everything. Or maybe I was just too tired to deal with the nuclear explosion that would follow. Instead, I nodded and went to grab a beer from the fridge. How was your day? Fine, busy, the usual. We ate dinner in relative silence, making small talk about the weather and the neighbor's new dog. Renee seemed distracted, checking her phone every few minutes. When I asked if she wanted to watch a movie, she said she had paperwork to catch up on and disappeared into her home office. I sat alone in the living room, drinking beer and watching SportsCenter, trying to figure out when my life had turned into a bad country song. Outside, it started to rain, because of course it did. Even the weather was feeling sorry for me. That night, lying in bed next to my wife who was pretending to be asleep, I made a decision. I was going to find out what was really going on, even if it ended me. It almost did. The truth came out 3 days later in the most humiliating way possible. Renee had suggested we go to dinner at Chez Laurent, the fanciest restaurant in town. The kind of place where the portions are tiny, the prices are astronomical, and the waiters look at you like you're personally responsible for the decline of Western civilization. I should have known something was up. Renee usually complained that places like that were pretentious and overpriced. We were halfway through our appetizers when Eric showed up. Not unusual in itself, Eric had a talent for appearing wherever free food might be available. But instead of his usual casual clothes, he was wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, already pulling out a chair. Renee's face lit up in a way it hadn't when she'd seen me all week. "Of course! Nick, isn't this a nice surprise?" I was starting to get a bad feeling in my gut, the kind that usually preceded food poisoning or tax audits. "Sure, great surprise." Eric ordered the most expensive thing on the menu and a bottle of wine that cost more than my car payment. He and Renee kept exchanging glances across the table like they were sharing some private joke. I felt like a third wheel at my own dinner. Then Renee cleared her throat and gave me that fake smile again. "Nick, honey, there's something I need to tell you." Here it comes, I thought. She's having an affair. She wants a divorce. She's joined a cult. She's pregnant with someone else's baby. My mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. "I'm in love," she said, "and I'm engaged." For a second, I thought she was talking about us. Some weird renewal of vows thing that would explain the fancy dinner and Eric's presence as a witness. Then she reached across the table and took Eric's hand. "We've been seeing each other for 8 months," she continued, her voice gaining confidence. "We didn't plan for it to happen, but sometimes love just finds a way. I hope you can be happy for us." The restaurant seemed to go quiet around us. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud and irregular. Eric was looking at me with something that might have been guilt or might have been pity. I couldn't tell which was worse. 8 months, I repeated slowly. "We wanted to tell you sooner," Eric said, speaking for the first time since dropping this bomb. "But we weren't sure how to—" 8 months. I was apparently stuck on that detail. 8 months of lies, 8 months of fake smiles and mysterious phone calls and business trips that weren't business trips. 8 months of my wife screwing my best friend while I worried about whether she was working too hard. "Nick, please say something," Renee pleaded. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my phone. A few months ago, Renee had gotten a tattoo on her lower back, a small, delicate script that spelled out my name. She'd said it was a symbol of her commitment to our marriage. At the time, I thought it was romantic, if a little impulsive. Now I scrolled through my photos until I found the one I'd taken of it, then airdropped it to Eric's phone with the caption, "Check the lower back." Eric's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went ashen. He stared at the screen for a long moment, then looked at Renee with something approaching horror. "You've got to be kidding me," he said. "What?" Renee looked confused. Eric turned his phone around so she could see the photo. "You have his name tattooed on your back. His name, Renee. That's not important. It's just ink. I can get it removed." "Just ink?" Eric's voice was rising, attracting stares from other diners. "You told me you were done with him months ago. You said the marriage was over and everything but paperwork." "It is. The tattoo doesn't mean anything. It means you're still wearing another man's name on your body while you're telling me you want to marry me." Eric stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. "This is insane. You're insane. We're done." He threw his napkin on the table and stormed out, leaving Renee staring after him with her mouth open. The entire restaurant was watching now. A dinner theater production of Marriage Implodes in Real Time. Renee turned back to me, tears starting to form in her eyes. "Nick, I can explain." "No need," I said, standing up and dropping my napkin next to Eric's. "I think you explained everything perfectly." I walked out of the restaurant, leaving my wife sitting alone at a table set for 3, surrounded by the wreckage of whatever plan she'd thought she had. Outside, it was raining again. I stood on the sidewalk, letting the water soak through my shirt, and tried to process what had just happened. In the span of 10 minutes, I'd lost my wife and my best friend. If I'd had a dog, I was pretty sure he would have run away too. My phone buzzed with a text from Eric. We need to talk. I deleted it without responding. Another buzz, this time from Renee. Please come home. Let me explain. I deleted that one too. Instead, I walked 6 blocks through the rain to Murphy's Tavern, where Lana took one look at my soaked, miserable appearance and poured me a double whiskey without being asked. That bad? She said. Worse? I told her everything. The dinner, the announcement, the tattoo, Eric's reaction. Lana listened without interrupting, occasionally refilling my glass. So let me get this straight, she said when I finished. Your wife cheats on you with your best friend, then announces their engagement at dinner, and the whole thing falls apart because she forgot about a tattoo? That's about the size of it. And now they're both texting you? Yep. Lana shook her head. Honey, you just won the lottery and don't even know it. How do you figure? Think about it. She could have just asked for a divorce. Clean, simple. Everybody moves on with their lives. Instead, she decided to humiliate you in public, probably thinking you'd just roll over and take it. And your buddy Eric? He was ready to marry a woman who was still married to someone else, until he realized she might not be as committed to him as he thought. Your point? My point is that they both showed you exactly who they really are, and now you get to decide what to do about it. I stared into my whiskey, watching the amber liquid catch the light from the neon beer signs. What would you do? Lana smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. Honey, I'd make them both regret the day they were born. But that's just me. I finished my drink and stood up. Thanks, Lana, for listening. Anytime. And Nick, don't let them make you feel like the victim here. You've got more power in this situation than you think. I walked home through the rain, thinking about what she'd said. By the time I reached my front door, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to be the sad, pathetic husband who got cheated on and dumped. I was going to be something much more dangerous. I was going to be the underdog who bit back. The house was dark when I got home, but Renee's car was in the driveway. I found her in the living room, still wearing her dress from dinner, makeup smeared from crying. She looked up when I walked in, hope flickering in her eyes. Nick, thank God. I was afraid you weren't coming back. I live here, I said, sitting in the chair across from her instead of on the couch next to her. For now. We need to talk about what happened tonight. No, we don't. What we need to talk about is what happens next. She leaned forward, trying to look sincere. I know you're hurt, and you have every right to be. But if we could just... 8 months, Renee. What? You said you and Eric have been together for 8 months. That means this started in July. Remember July, when you said you needed to expand the salon and asked me to co-sign that business loan for $50,000? Her face went pale. That's not... The loan was for the salon. Was it? Because I'm thinking maybe it was for something else. Maybe it was for fancy dinners and expensive hotels and whatever else you and Eric needed to fund your little romance. You're being ridiculous. I pulled out my phone and showed her the banking app. I'm a co-signer on that loan, which means I have access to all the account statements. Want to guess what I'm going to find when I start going through them? Nick, please. Here's what's going to happen, I said, standing up. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling the bank and demanding immediate repayment of that loan. If the money's not there, and I'm betting it's not, then we're going to have a problem. You can't do that. Actually, I can. Read the fine print. Either party can demand full repayment with 30 days' notice if they have reason to believe the funds are being misused. Renee stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. You're not this smart. No, I'm not. But John Morrison is. John Morrison had been my father's partner back when Dad was a cop. After Dad died, John had sort of adopted me as the son he never had. He was retired now, but he still had connections throughout the city, and he'd helped me understand exactly what my legal options were after I'd called him from Murphy's. I don't know who you think you are, Renee said, standing up and crossing her arms. But you can't just destroy my business because you're jealous. Jealous? I laughed, and it didn't sound pleasant even to me. Renee, I'm not jealous. I'm done. There's a difference. Fine. You want a divorce? You'll get a divorce, but don't think you're going to take everything I've worked for. Everything you've worked for was built with money you stole from me. I didn't steal anything. Then you won't have any problem paying back the loan. I headed for the stairs, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Renee, you might want to call Eric. Let him know that his new fiancée is about to lose her business. I'm sure he'll be very supportive. I went upstairs and locked myself in the guest bedroom. Through the thin walls, I could hear Renee on the phone, her voice rising and falling in what sounded like increasingly desperate conversations. First Eric, then Lila, Then someone else I didn't recognize. I didn't sleep much that night, but I wasn't tired. For the first time in months, I felt like I had a purpose. The next morning, I was at the bank when it opened. The loan officer, a nervous young man named Kevin, looked uncomfortable as he reviewed my request. "Mr. Halpern, this is highly unusual. The account is current on all payments. Check the terms of the loan agreement. I have the right to demand repayment if I believe the funds are being misused. But you'll need to provide evidence." "I will, 30 days from today. In the meantime, I want the account frozen pending investigation." Kevin made some phone calls and shuffled some papers. 20 minutes later, I walked out with a copy of the freeze order and a promise that Renee would be notified by the end of the day. My next stop was Lana's apartment. She lived above a bakery downtown, and the smell of fresh bread followed me up the narrow stairs. She answered the door in pajamas and a robe, holding a cup of coffee. "This is either really good news or really bad news," she said, letting me in. "Good news, I think. I need your help with something." "I'm listening." I told her about the loan and the account freeze. She listened with growing admiration. "Wow, Nick, I didn't know you had it in you." "Neither did I, but I'm just getting started. What do you need from me?" "Information. You know everyone in this town, and everyone talks to bartenders. I need to know everything about Dr. Matt Caro." Lana nearly choked on her coffee. "Caro? The plastic surgeon? You know him?" "Honey, every woman in this city knows Dr. Caro. He's the guy you go to when you want to look 10 years younger and have money to burn. Why are you asking about him?" I showed her a photo I'd found on Renee's phone the night before, a picture of her and Eric at some fancy restaurant. But in the background, clear as day, was Renee talking to a distinguished-looking man with silver hair. "Because I think he's the real reason my wife started caring about expensive wine and classical music." Lana studied the photo. "Well, I'll be shocked. You think she's been playing both sides?" "I think she's been playing everyone. The question is, what's her endgame?" "Give me 24 hours, Lana said. "I'll find out everything there is to know about the good doctor." I spent the rest of the day at work, trying to focus on buffing and waxing while my phone buzzed constantly with calls and texts from Renee. I ignored them all. Around 3 o'clock, Eric showed up at the shop. He looked like heck. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, red-rimmed eyes. "We need to talk." "No, we don't. Nick, please, I know you hate me right now, and you have every right to. But there are things you don't understand." I set down the buffer and looked at him. "Enlighten me. She told me your marriage was over. She said you two were just staying together for financial reasons until she could get the salon profitable." "And you believed her?" "Why wouldn't I? She seemed miserable whenever she talked about you. Always complaining about how you didn't understand her ambitions, how you were holding her back." "So you decided to help her out?" "It wasn't like that. It just happened. We were having drinks after I helped her negotiate the lease on the new salon space, and one thing led to another." I stared at him. "You helped her with the lease?" "Yeah. She said you were too busy with work to deal with the legal stuff." "What legal stuff, Eric? What lease?" He looked confused. "The lease on the downtown space. For the second location." "There is no second location." "What are you talking about? I've been there. It's a beautiful space on 5th Street, right above that new wine bar." My blood went cold. "Show me." 20 minutes later, we were standing outside a building on 5th Street, looking up at windows with expensive curtains and soft lighting. It wasn't a salon. It was an apartment. Eric stared at the building like he was seeing it for the first time. "This isn't," she said it was going to be a salon. "No, Eric. This is where she's been meeting Dr. Caro, and probably where she's been meeting you, too." When she told him she was working late. "Dr. Caro?" I showed him the photo. Eric's face went white. "She's been seeing him, too?" "Looks like it." Eric sat down heavily on a nearby bench. "How many of us are there?" "That's what I'm going to find out." I left Eric sitting there and walked back to my truck. My phone rang as I was pulling away from the curb. "Lana, you're not going to believe what I found out about your doctor friend," she said. "Try me. He's married, has been for 25 years. And get this, his wife is the daughter of the guy who owns half the commercial real estate in this city." "Interesting. It gets better. Dr. Caro has a reputation for getting a little too friendly with his female patients. There have been rumors for years, but nothing anyone could prove. Until now." "Exactly. How do you want to play this?" I thought about it for a moment, watching Eric in my rearview mirror, still sitting on the bench with his head in his hands. I want to meet Mrs. Caro. Meeting Mrs. Caro turned out to be easier than I'd expected. Lana had done her homework and discovered that Patricia Caro volunteered every Thursday at the Children's Hospital, organizing art therapy sessions for young patients. She was, by all accounts, a genuinely nice woman who dedicated her life to helping others, while her husband dedicated his to helping himself to whatever he wanted. I found her in the hospital's activity room, surrounded by kids with paint-covered hands and huge smiles. She was maybe 55, with graying blonde hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The kind of woman who probably baked cookies for church fundraisers and never forgot anyone's birthday. I waited until the session was over and the kids had been collected by nurses before approaching her. Mrs. Caro, my name is Nick Halprin. I was wondering if I could speak with you privately. She looked puzzled, but not alarmed. Of course. Is this about the hospital? Oh, ma'am, it's about your husband. Now she looked alarmed. Is Matt okay? Has something happened? He's fine physically, but there's something you need to know. I showed her the photos I'd found on Renee's phone. Not just the restaurant picture, but several others I discovered by going through her cloud storage. Renee and Dr. Caro at various locations around the city, looking very much like a couple. Mrs. Caro studied the photos in silence, her face growing paler with each one. When she finished, she handed my phone back and sat down heavily in one of the small plastic chairs. How long? She asked quietly. I don't know, maybe 8 months, maybe longer. And you are? The woman's husband, soon-to-be ex-husband. She nodded slowly. I'm sorry, for both of us. Mrs. Caro, I need you to know that I'm planning to expose this, all of it. Your husband, my wife, the whole mess. I wanted to tell you first because you don't deserve to be blindsided. Thank you for that courtesy. She stood up and smoothed down her skirt. Mr. Halprin, would you mind if I asked you a favor? What kind of favor? When you do expose this, would you mind if I was there? I'd like to see my husband's face when his world comes crashing down. I smiled for the first time in days. Mrs. Caro, it would be my pleasure. That evening, I met with Lana and John at Murphy's to plan our next move. John had spent the day making discreet inquiries about Dr. Caro's business practices and had turned up some interesting information. Your boy Matt has been playing fast and loose with his prescription pad, John said, nursing a beer. Word is he's been writing scripts for pain medication for patients who don't need it, then selling the pills on the side. Can you prove it? I asked. Not yet, but I've got a friend in the DEA who's been looking for an excuse to take a closer look at the good doctor's records. What about the apartment? Lana asked. Have you figured out who's paying for it? I pulled out a folder full of bank statements and credit card bills I'd printed out earlier. According to this, Renee's been making monthly payments to something called Fifth Street Properties for the past 6 months. $1,500 a month. That's not salon money, John observed. No, it's not. It's love nest money. My phone buzzed with another text from Renee. We need to talk. This has gone far enough. I showed it to Lana, who snorted. She's scared. Good. She should be. Tomorrow's the salon's 5th anniversary party. Renee's been planning it for months. Invited everyone in town, rented out the community center, hired a caterer. She's expecting it to be her big moment, showing off how successful she's become. And, John asked, and I'm going to give her a party she'll never forget. The next evening, I arrived at the community center fashionably late. The party was in full swing, maybe 100 people milling around, drinking wine and admiring the photo displays Renee had set up showing the salon's evolution over the years. She'd even hired a local photographer to document the event. Renee spotted me as soon as I walked in. She was wearing a new dress that probably cost more than most people's rent, and her smile looked like it had been painted on with a trowel. Nick, I'm so glad you came. We really need to talk. Later, I said, accepting a glass of wine from a passing waiter. This is your big night. I wouldn't want to spoil it. I mingled for about an hour, making small talk with people I'd known for years. Most of them had heard rumors about Renee and Eric. Small towns are terrible at keeping secrets, but they were too polite to bring it up directly. Instead, they asked carefully worded questions about how I was holding up and whether I was doing okay. Around 9 o'clock, Renee took the microphone to give her speech. She thanked everyone for coming, talked about how the salon had grown from a dream into a thriving business, and made some vague comments about exciting changes coming in the future. That's when I made my move. I'd spent the afternoon preparing a little slideshow of my own, using photos from Renee's phone and some creative editing software. Nothing explicit or illegal, just a collection of images that told a very clear story about how my wife had been spending her time and my money. While Renee was talking, I quietly connected my phone to the large screen TV that was displaying her salon photos. A few taps later, my slideshow began playing behind her. It took about 30 seconds for people to notice. The first photo showed Renee and Dr. Caro having what looked like a romantic dinner. The second showed them entering the 5th Street apartment together. The third was a screenshot of text messages between them, including one that read, "Can't wait to have you all to myself tonight. Wear that cologne I like." The room went silent. Renee, oblivious to what was happening behind her, kept talking about building something beautiful and following your dreams. Then someone in the crowd gasped, and she turned around. Her face went through about 6 different colors before settling on a shade of red that matched her lipstick. She fumbled for the remote to turn off the TV, but I was already disconnecting my phone. "Sorry about that," I announced to the stunned crowd. "Technical difficulties. Please, Renee, continue with your speech about building something beautiful." But Renee was done talking. She pushed through the crowd toward the exit, with Lila and a few other friends trailing behind her. The party broke up quickly after that, with people making awkward excuses and heading for their cars. I was packing up my phone when Patricia Caro appeared at my elbow. I hadn't seen her come in, but there she was, looking composed and determined. "That was very well done," she said quietly. "Thank you. I'm sorry you had to see those." "Don't be. I needed to see them." She paused. "My husband should be here any minute. He's supposed to pick me up at 9:30. Mrs. Caro, you don't have to—" "Oh, but I do. I've been married to that man for 25 years, and I've looked the other way more times than I care to admit. But this time is different." "How so?" "This time he messed with the wrong woman's husband." Dr. Caro arrived 10 minutes later, looking harried and checking his phone constantly. He was a distinguished-looking man in his early 50s, with the kind of silver hair and confident bearing that probably made his female patients feel like they were in very capable hands. He spotted his wife immediately and headed over, not noticing me standing nearby. "Patricia, we need to go. There's been some kind of emergency at the—" "Hello, Matt." He turned and saw me for the first time. His face went pale as he recognized me from the photos. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced," I continued. "I'm Nick Halprin, Renee's husband." Dr. Caro looked around the nearly empty room, taking in the overturned chairs and abandoned wine glasses. "I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding. Just a long overdue introduction. Your wife and I have been having a very interesting conversation about your extracurricular activities." He looked at Patricia, who was watching him with the expression of someone observing a particularly unpleasant insect. "Patricia, whatever this man has told you—" "He didn't tell me anything, Matt. He showed me. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, don't you think?" Dr. Caro's composure finally cracked. "It's not what it looks like. It looks like you've been having an affair with a married woman and using your medical practice to fund your lifestyle." I said, "Is that not what it is?" "You don't know what you're talking about." "Actually, I do. See, I've been doing some research, talking to people, learning all sorts of interesting things about your business practices." I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo John had taken earlier that day. Dr. Caro's Porsche parked outside the 5th Street apartment. "Nice car. Must be expensive to maintain. Good thing you've got that side business selling prescription pills to supplement your income." Now he looked genuinely scared. "You can't prove anything." "Maybe not, but I bet the DEA can. They're very thorough when they investigate doctors who misuse their prescription privileges." Patricia stepped forward and removed her wedding ring, placing it on the table next to the abandoned microphone. 25 years, Matt. 25 years I stood by you, supported your career, looked the other way when you came home smelling like another woman's perfume. But this is where it ends." She turned to me. "Mr. Halprin, thank you for opening my eyes. I hope you find the happiness you deserve." She walked out, leaving her husband standing there like a man who just watched his house burn down. Dr. Caro turned to me, and for a moment I thought he might try to hit me. Instead, he straightened his tie and tried to recover what was left of his dignity. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet." He left without another word. I stood alone in the empty community center, surrounded by the debris of Renee's celebration, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months, I felt like I was winning. The next few days passed in a blur of angry phone calls, threatening letters, and increasingly desperate attempts by Renee to salvage her situation. She'd lost most of her salon clients after word of the anniversary party spread through town. Dr. Caro was apparently avoiding her calls, and Eric had made it clear that their engagement was permanently off. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. John's DEA contact had moved quickly, and by Friday morning, Dr. Caro's office was crawling with federal agents executing a search warrant. The local news picked up the story, and suddenly everyone in town was talking about the prominent plastic surgeon who'd been arrested for prescription pills trafficking. That's when I got the call I'd been waiting for. "Nick, it's Eric. We need to meet." "I thought you were done talking to me. Please, there's something you need to know about Renee. About all of this." I agreed to meet him at Murphy's, mostly because I was curious to see how much deeper this rabbit hole went. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a half-empty bottle of beer and the look of a man who hadn't slept in days. "You were right," he said without preamble. "About everything." "I usually am. What specifically are you referring to?" "Renee, the apartment, the whole setup." He took a long drink. "She's been playing all of us." "Tell me something I don't know." "She never loved me, Nick. Heck, she never even liked me. The whole thing was a scam." I sat down across from him. "What kind of scam?" "Insurance fraud. She was planning to stage her own disappearance, collect on a life insurance policy, and disappear with the money." I stared at him. "That's ridiculous. How do you pull something like that off?" "Car accident. She had it all planned out. Drive her car off the bridge into Miller's Creek, make it look like she lost control in the rain. The water's deep enough that it would take days to recover a body if they ever found one." "And you know this how?" Eric reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder. "Because she asked me to help her. Said we could use the insurance money to start a new life together somewhere warm and far away." I opened the folder and found copies of insurance documents, fake identification papers, and what looked like a detailed timeline for the staged accident. The life insurance policy was for $500,000, with me listed as the beneficiary. "She was going to let you think she was dead," Eric continued. "Let you collect the insurance money, then steal it from you later." "How?" "The fake IDs. She had documents showing that you'd been embezzling money from your business, hiding assets, planning to disappear yourself. Once you collected the insurance payout, she was going to turn you into the authorities and claim the money as a reward for helping catch a fugitive." I felt sick. When was this supposed to happen? Next week. She'd already picked out the night, Thursday, when there's supposed to be a thunderstorm. I closed the folder and looked at Eric. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm not a butcher, Nick. And because she made one mistake, which was, she told me about Dr. Caro, said he was going to help her with the medical side of things, fake death certificate, false autopsy report. That's when I realized she was planning to double-cross me too." "How so?" "Think about it. If she's officially dead and you're in prison for embezzlement, who gets the insurance money?" I thought about it. Her next of kin, which would be her cousin Julian, the lawyer. Everything clicked into place. Julian had been helping Renee with the legal paperwork for the salon expansion. He'd been the one to suggest the life insurance policy in the first place, claiming it was a smart financial move for a business owner. And he'd been conspicuously absent from the anniversary party. "Where is she now?" I asked. "The apartment on 5th Street. She's been staying there since the party, trying to figure out her next move." I stood up. "Eric, I need you to do something for me." "What?" "Call Renee. Tell her you've changed your mind about the insurance plan. Tell her you want to help her after all." "Why would I do that?" "Because we're going to give her exactly what she wants, a chance to fake her own death." An hour later, I was sitting in John's living room explaining the situation to him and Lana. John listened without interrupting, occasionally shaking his head in disbelief. "That's the most elaborate revenge scheme I've ever heard," he said when I finished. "And also probably illegal. Not if we do it right. We're not going to hurt anyone or steal anything. We're just going to let Renee dig her own grave. Metaphorically speaking," Lana added. "Right, metaphorically." John thought about it for a moment. "What do you need from me?" "Your contacts in the police department. I want them to be ready when Renee makes her move." "And what about Dr. Caro? He's already finished. The DEA found enough evidence to put him away for years. But I want to make sure Renee knows that her medical accomplice isn't going to be available to help with her fake death." How do we do that? I smiled. We tell her the truth. The next evening, Eric called Renee and arranged to meet her at the 5th Street apartment. He wore a wire provided by John's police contacts, and I listened from a van parked across the street as he played his role perfectly. I'm sorry about the way I reacted, he told her. You caught me off guard with the whole insurance thing. But I've been thinking about it, and you're right. We could have a good life together with that money. Are you sure? Renee's voice came through clearly on the recording equipment. Because once we do this, there's no going back. I'm sure. When do we make our move? Tomorrow night. The weather forecast is perfect. Thunderstorms, low visibility, slick roads. It'll look completely believable. What about Dr. Caro? Is he still willing to help with the medical stuff? There was a long pause. There's been a complication with Matt. He's been arrested. Arrested for what? Pills trafficking. The DEA raided his office yesterday. He's not going to be able to help us. So how do we fake the death certificate? Another pause. We don't. We're going to have to actually go through with it. Go through with what? The accident. But don't worry. I've got it all figured out. We'll make it look like you were driving my car. You'll be the one who dies, not me. Even through the radio, I could hear Eric's sharp intake of breath. What are you talking about? Think about it, Eric. If I'm dead, people will investigate. But if you're dead and I'm the grieving widow who lost both her husband and her boyfriend in the same week, nobody will look too closely at the insurance payout. You're talking about actually ending me. It's not personal. It's just business. That's when the police moved in. I watched from across the street as officers surrounded the building and made their way upstairs. Through the apartment windows, I could see the arrest taking place. Renee in handcuffs, shouting something I couldn't hear, while Eric stood to one side, looking relieved and terrified at the same time. My phone rang. John, we got her, he said. Conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, attempted homicide, and about 6 other charges. She's going away for a long time. What about Eric? He's cooperating fully, probably looking at probation and community service in exchange for his testimony. I hung up and walked across the street to where the police were loading Renee into a patrol car. She saw me coming and started screaming. This is all your fault. You destroyed everything. You ruined my life. No, Renee, I said calmly. You did that all by yourself. I just helped you do it faster. The patrol car drove away, taking my wife and the wreckage of our marriage with it. I stood on the sidewalk for a long time, watching the taillights disappear into the distance. Lana appeared at my elbow. How do you feel? Tired, relieved, free. Any regrets? I thought about it. Just one. What's that? I should have done this months ago. 6 months later, I was sitting in Murphy's Tavern, reading the newspaper article about Renee's sentencing. 5 to 10 years for conspiracy and attempted homicide. Dr. Caro had gotten 15 years for pills trafficking and conspiracy. Eric had received 2 years probation and 500 hours of community service. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier. I'd kept the house, the business, and what was left of my dignity. Renee had kept her tattoo and her prison uniform. Another beer? Lana asked, wiping down the bar. Why not? I'm celebrating. What are we celebrating? The fact that I'm the luckiest unlucky man in the world. How do you figure? I married a woman who tried to have me framed for embezzlement and my best friend taken out of the picture, but I found out about it before she could go through with it. If that's not luck, I don't know what is. Lana laughed and poured me another beer. Here's to lucky escapes and second chances. I raised my glass, and to underdogs who bite back. Outside, it was starting to rain again. But this time, I didn't mind. Rain meant new growth, fresh starts, clean slates. And I was ready for all of it. For the first time in years, I was ready for anything.